we're looking at for protein, if someone is not on hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis, their needs would be below the RDA. And again, the RDA is 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So if someone has renal disease and is not on dialysis, they would then be at a 0.6 grams per kilogram. If they are on dialysis, doesn't matter the type, hemodialysis or peritoneal dialysis, their needs will be about 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. High potassium foods that we'll want to look at, recall you have this list in Blackboard that I pointed out to you. So if we go into the renal diet heading, you'll see high potassium foods and low potassium foods. So if when someone with renal disease, when their labs are drawn, if they have high potassium, abnormally high, then they'll be put on a lower potassium diet. So they'd want to avoid things listed on this high potassium food list, like bananas, oranges, potatoes, tomatoes. So a lot of things that are pretty healthy for us. Dairy foods. And then phosphorus as well may need to be limited, and that's things like dairy, meats, chocolates, teas. But again, it's going to be individualized for the person. The renal diet can be very restrictive, and it can be difficult to make palatable because of these restrictions. So we don't want to put this blanket restriction on everybody. We want to look at the labs and work with the registered dietitian to know what they can have. Another big thing with our renal patients is sodium. So they'll need to have lower sodium foods. And oftentimes we think that a salt substitute, like no salt, would be a good option. But actually, these salt substitutes are made with potassium chloride versus traditional salt, which is sodium chloride. And then that potassium chloride, or that no salt or salt substitute, will lead then to too high levels of sodium. So avoiding salt subs is important. And then fluid needs, you have in this week's information by the chapter 5 PowerPoint, fluid needs. So someone on decreased fluids would be someone with edema or renal failure, okay? Hepatic failure, we talked about liver already. And you'll see that someone with higher fluid needs, it wouldn't be renal failure. This particular handout, I think, will serve you well if you can save this and utilize it, put it someplace close, save it a couple places, print it out. You will use this for the rest of your tenure here in our program. We talked briefly about Alzheimer's disease and the importance of making sure that it's individualized and we're creative, maybe serving those finger foods, serving a larger meal at breakfast because of a sundowning effect. If y'all want an example of sundowning, you can watch the movie The Notebook. Remember, that's based on a book by Nicholas Sparks. Lovely movie. And towards the end of that movie, the husband and wife are at their long-term care facility and they're having a nice meal and they're dancing. And suddenly the wife starts freaking out and becoming combative and not recognizing her husband. And the medical staff rush in and you can hear them say, she's sundowning. So you could even just do a quick Google search and look for sundowning in The Notebook, and you'll see that scene there. It just, because later in the day they get more agitated. So like I said, you want to maximize nutrition earlier in the day. So providing nutrient-dense meals and snacks. You can look at the staging in your text on page 118 for Alzheimer's disease. Most folks with Alzheimer's disease have much higher calorie needs because they're prone to wandering, so they're putting on a lot of steps and just sort of aimlessly wandering around the facility. They need weekly weights. We need all staff involved to help assist and observe at meal times.